Wonderful, thank you so much. All right, well, thank you guys. Does anybody have any board comments they want to address at the moment?
No, thank you guys for being here.
Yes.
Excited to get into it. This is one of my favorite topics.
Yes. I know, I'm excited about this one too, and the API. And then going into, I like how you guys have formatted things to really kind of pull things that are similar together. So it kind of has some cohesiveness, so I appreciate that. Absolutely. We do have the meeting minutes from the last one. Any questions about the meeting minutes? You guys have, okay, motion to approve the meeting minutes?
I'm going to approve.
Second.
Aye, sir. Everybody ready that approves?
Yeah, we're
Aye.
in agreement.
There we go, we're good. Motion and meeting minutes from the last meeting are now approved. And now we may move on. Thank you.
Just to verify there is no public comment, right? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, good morning once again, and yes, you're right. We are working intentionally to try to streamline these presentations for you. Historically, advanced academics and dual enrollment were two separate presentations, but we have tried to bring it all together, really under this umbrella of college and career pathways. So we're going to handle this presentation a little bit differently and actually start with high school and then back down into middle and elementary, and just kind of starting with the end in mind. As we just again try to give you the complete picture of advanced academics and FCPS, which obviously dual enrollment and AP are an extension of at the high school level. So we'll start with just a little bit of background, and we'll start with high school dual enrollment and advanced placement, and then back into middle and elementary school programming. Always want to start off with a vision around advanced academics for us as a system, which is really about access for all students, advanced coursework and opportunities for enrichment and acceleration at elementary and middle school, that we have approaches that we're getting as many students as possible enrolled in these courses and giving the opportunity when we see potential. And so our vision really is that opportunities for advanced coursework, or any students that we see with potential, are given that access, as opposed to the old days where it might have been specific rigid criteria to access an advanced course, which is really no longer the case in the way that we approach these kinds of courses. Also wanted to frame some of this around college and career pathways with the blueprint. The next slide, please. The way the blueprint has framed out these pathways are really in three major buckets at the high school level. One are the college prep programs, it's called in the blueprint, which includes advanced placement, AP, as well as international baccalaureate, which we in FCPS have one of those programs at Urbana. Second is our dual enrollment programs, all of them, whether it's early college, open campus, high school-based, career pathways, any of the various ways that we approach dual enrollment is the second bucket, and the third, obviously, is career and technical education. All of these are what are pitched in the blueprint as post-CCR pathways in our high schools. Some of what we're going to be talking about today really is about our growth in all of these areas as a district, both in dual enrollment as well as in advanced placement. This committee is actually a really good opportunity for you to really understand how we implement some of our procedures, particularly around dual enrollment. I know we get a lot of questions about our budget, about how we structure the dual enrollment offerings. So we're going to start with that. As I said, then we'll cover middle school, cover elementary, but really looking forward to informing you all about, in particular, about how we manage some of the programmatic aspects in the budget with dual enrollment. So I'm going to turn it over to the team. We have Dr. Jessica Reinhardt, our Supervisor of Advanced Academics, and Dr. Diana Sung, our Coordinator of Dual Enrollment and AP.
So thank you. I'm happy to get to present before you. I think the last time I presented to C&I, it was a previous board, so I'm happy to get to know you. So for dual enrollment, as you guys know, in the last few years, it's been growing pretty exponentially, but our AP programs have also been increasing. And so we're benchmarking from 21 to 22, because that was right after COVID, and also that's when the new key performance indicators kind of started with our benchmarks. So since that time, our participation by number of students has increased in dual enrollment by more than 80%. And for advanced placement, it's more than 40%. And so you can kind of see the growth. And for advanced placement, it's increased by almost as many students, but it was a larger program to begin with. So the percentage is a little lower. But you can see 2025-26, those are preliminary numbers. We will have some more students enroll in dual enrollment classes, especially for spring. And for AP, there might be some adjustments as students decide they want to try it or or it's too much, or things like that. So, but it's good to know kind of what we're going into the year with. So you can see that growth has obviously contributed, as well as just noting that the sort of change in the financial model happened between school year 2022-23 and 23-24 in terms of when we are starting to cover more costs. One of the things that's important to note is obviously our school system is also growing. So raw numbers of students doesn't always give you a picture of how big the system is growing. So what this chart is we also look at, at any time in high school did a student participate in this program. So most participate in senior year, but some might have participated in junior year and chosen to do a CTE program of study in their senior year, something like that. So this is the percent of seniors that have ever participated in a dual enrollment or an AP program over the last few years. And so if you look at that, last year's class, over 70% of students were leaving FCPS with either an AP or a DE course participation. And one of the things we also take very seriously is ensuring access for students. And so we do look at some of our underrepresented student groups in those populations, and you can see that's the percent of seniors who are in that student group who participated in that program. And so you can see that we've been really intentional about making sure that students who are capable of success in these programs are being identified and being invited and being welcomed into the programs. And so it's really just important to note that. We still have a little bit of work to do in that area, but again, to know. Another thing to note, this is any student who took AP or DE, but probably about 2/3 of kids who participate in one program participate in the other. They may not do a full pathway in one of them, but we have a lot of overlap where students will have taken one or more AP classes and have taken one or more dual enrollment classes. All right, so a lot of times people ask if we're increasing access, what's happening to our success rates. So it's really important to note we have more students accessing it, but they're also taking more courses. So that is the number of courses that were taken in 2023-24 and 2024-25. That is dominated by our high school-based program. And our high school-based program is the program where they're taking it, it's actually offered in the high school. Our primary model for that is what's called concurrent enrollment, where the college is certifying and qualifying our high school staff. We do have a couple of situations where the FCC adjunct is coming in and things like that. But you can see the vast majority of our courses that our students are taking are in the high school. There's a lot of really great reasons for that. So first of all, it's the most accessible program. There's no transportation. A lot of our students love their high schools. They love the community, and so they want to stay there. Because it's a high school teacher, often, they may know that teacher from another context, and it makes them feel more comfortable and welcome to be able to participate in that program. And so that tends to be our most popular model. Also the most cost-effective for FCPS. Our average number of courses that students take is increasing a little bit because we do have more students accessing some of the early college, the associate degree pathway program. However, it is holding fairly steady. You can see the Maryland Blueprint law says that students are able to take 4 classes at no cost. And so you can see that we're still under that average for students participating in that program. We also have a really high success rate, right? This is by course enrollments. So when you look at students, like if they're taking 2 classes, maybe one class they had to withdraw from, but they still earn college credit in the other. But we've got just for courses a 92% success rate in earning college credit for those 8,600 courses. We also have had a significant growth in the number of students trying to complete an associate degree while they're still with us. So last year, 44 students graduated with their AA and their high school diploma. We have 62 seniors currently on track for graduating this spring with both, and we have 72 juniors currently enrolled in early college, and a number of kids in both open campus and our high school based who have indicated that that's a goal that they're trying to accomplish through those other programs.
Thank you, Dr. Sung. I did want to stick with this slide for just a second and point out a couple things. So we do get a lot of questions from board members on some of these numbers, particularly as it relates to the budget. First off, the percent of students earning college credit, 91, 92%, that actually outpaces the average FCC student. And so our students, FCPS, taking dual enrollment courses actually perform better, bring up the average success rate for FCC overall. The other thing is that emphasis on high school based. It is more effective, cost effective for us as a district when students take those high school based classes. Because of our agreement with FCC, when those courses are taught by FCPS instructors, we pay a much lower amount of the tuition when they're taught in our schools versus the open campus. The other thing, as Dr. Sung mentioned, with the limitations of 4 courses per year that we cover as a district, last year, 24-25 was actually the first year that was fully implemented. It came midway through the year before that. So last year was the very first year of putting some of those limitations in place, which is why our budget stabilized. So if you remember when we worked on the FY26 budget, there was no increase for tuition because the budget had finally stabilized after several years of kind of exponential growth budget-wise. Because of our emphasis on high school based as well as some of those limitations, we now can pretty confidently project the estimated budget for tuition for FCC.
Question for you. You had mentioned that we are still paying FCC even when our teachers are teaching the courses. That's correct?
We are. That's
What
part
are
of
we paying?
We pay 40%.
43% of tuition, no fees. So we pay no fees at all. And that covers kind of their institutional costs, including transcripting, professional learning for our teachers. It includes things like access to library services through the college courses, Blackboard, all of that kind of institutional cost.
You mentioned professional development. So FCC's providing the professional development for all our instructors?
There are adjunct professors, and so it's from FCC, so they are providing professional learning for our teachers.
It is for a college level program, it's not for
Right.
professional development for high
So
school.
So our teachers
dollars
are,
and cents per credit. What are we paying for an FCPS student? Don't give me percentages. Dollars and cents. What are we paying?
A 3-credit class is around $165.
165.
and most of them are standard 3
Most of them are
credits, but then you
3,
got
or lab sciences are 4.
Yeah,
Okay.
There's always a little bit of variation.
When our students take the school-based programs, do they go to class like every day, like they would a typical high school class, or do they have more of the college model where you're going for different days?
Great question. It takes some creative scheduling. Do you want to address that?
We have, we try and make the high school-based courses as college-like as possible because the research is pretty clear that the more like an authentic college class it is, the more advantage students see in the program. And so those programs actually do run only 2 days a week during the block. So we're able to have one instructor, like one teacher during their first block, for example. They would teach a Monday, Thursday class of English 101 and then a Tuesday, Friday class of English 101. So we're actually able to get some creative, like additional students into that same block. And then Wednesdays are usually our office hours. So students have that unscheduled time, but they have access to their teacher and their professor during that time, so they're able to come in and get some assistance with those programs, just like they would at a college campus. So we do that intentionally. We run the schedules sort of more like a college schedule.
Do we know cost-wise for the $165 for the 3 credits? Do we know cost-wise where we compare to other LEAs in the state of Maryland with dual enrollment pricing on the credits? Where do we compare with that?
That's considerably lower than the vast majority of other MOUs in terms of high school-based programs. There's a couple of school districts that have a 50% agreement, which is a little more than the 43% agreement. But I think we're the only district that has that price modeling where it's different for the high school-based and the open campus.
Are we the lowest cost in the state?
I believe we're one of, it depends on what the college charges because it's done usually by percentage of what the college charges. And FCC is not the least expensive school in the state, but I think we have the lowest percentage. So one of the lowest.
We can get some of that information for you. There's a Maryland Association of Community College Community College, is that what it's called?
Mac.
Yeah. That sort of brings these MOUs together and helps govern some of this statewide. It is not universal across the state, the high school based. FCPS really led the way with this many, many years ago, being one of the first to offer the high school based with its own employees as instructors, which when this began over a decade ago now, I think, FCPS really established the model, and it's still not in place statewide.
Okay.
And that makes comparison really difficult.
Right.
And of course, every community college, like you said, is going to have a different structure as well.
And Blueprint mandates the maximum is 75%,
Yeah.
so 43% is pretty significantly under what
Under
we're seeing.
expectation, yeah. And then I know we were talking a lot about the budget and so forth, and if I remember correctly as well, from when we were looking at classroom sizes, right? It seems like at the end of the year, everybody's looking to the next year and worrying about enrollment and so forth. And if I remember, particularly in the high school, you know, if I'm a parent looking at a book and seeing these enrollment numbers coming in for the next year, it might look one way, but in reality it's a little bit different because students are going maybe off campus or into a dual enrollment course. How does that affect sort of those numbers that a principal may have to deal with and also managing, you know, the teachers they have for the courses they can offer at the high school, and does that make sense?
It does, and it gets really complex.
It does.
When we talk about how enrollment
Yeah.
formulas create staffing for schools,
Yeah,
especially
that's
junior and senior year,
Yeah.
when students might have an internship.
Yes.
They might be going off campus to FCC. They might be in an apprenticeship and not necessarily sitting in class. And so, because it's typically restricted to junior and senior year, and the opportunities that kids have are so diverse, that it's really not a huge swing in class size that it creates. And it's also because of our emphasis on high school base, the kids are there in school anyway.
Yeah, and then I was really thinking even more so because the class size has really impacted the teaching and staffing that we have available to us. And then, of course, if a principal has to cut a program like dance class at Urbana, right, to accommodate that, you know, he couldn't hire on more staff and didn't have that budget. So does it affect any of those as well, and how the principal has to think about their staffing and their other classes and so forth, or not at all?
Anytime there's borderline enrollment,
It's hard, right? It is a
whether it's
complicated.
dual enrollment or
Yeah.
AP or dance or other courses that we offer, when there's borderline enrollment of small numbers,
Yeah.
schools are faced with difficult decisions about running the courses.
Yeah, and obviously these are very popular. And we surveyed too, there's quite a jump in year after year, which is fantastic, of students wanting to get that dual enrollment and then their AA earned by the time that they graduate. Has that been driven by maybe the cost that they're foreseeing college to be, or they're just ready to understand what they want to learn?
So students primarily sign up for this program for like 3 reasons. One
Yeah.
is that cost savings.
Yeah.
That's a big driver. One is that, that wanting to get ahead on their college credits. Our FCC courses are pretty transferable throughout the state, and the state of Maryland community colleges have a really high reputation nationally, and so generally our students are able to transfer a lot of classes. And for the high school-based courses, like there's a whole process of adopting those courses. We specifically focus on highly transferable general education requirements so that students are kind of getting the most bang for their buck, and it's the strongest program it can be. But for the third reason, it's often that like wanting that challenge, wanting to try something different. They're not sure if they want to go to college, they want to go to FCC, they want to go to a 4-year. So that's when we survey our students and we ask them the reasons why they chose to do dual enrollment, those tend to be the 3 primary that keep coming up.
That's fantastic. And then, since I'm just asking quick questions, I did see you were talking about how we're doing a better job of just trying to make sure that we're assessing students earlier and assessing those needs and trying to get them into the programs that are appropriate for them. And I saw quite a big jump for like students with special needs, for instance. And is that really just reflective of some of the things that you've been doing and what are those things that are a little bit different that have been working for you to really identify those students?
That's a great question. We do a lot of intentional work around some of these groups. For the students with disabilities in particular, the last 2 years, we've really been able to work with our special education department and get them in touch with, FCC has a disability access services office where all of the all of the disability needs that are served at the college would run through their Disability Access Services office, and that's the FCC office. And so we developed a MOU, not MOU, sorry, a standard operating procedure, an SOP, that would help guide our staff who are working with students with IEPs in how to help them navigate this system. And it also, we got a lot of feedback from the Disability Access Services about how to, how to serve those students better. And so I think when we partnered that way, it made those pathways a little bit clearer for our students, our staff, and gave them resources to be able to share with families so that families felt a little less intimidated by trying this process. Because when you have academic service needs, you not only have to go through the FCPS school system, but then when you go to college, you have to go through another process of navigation. And so that was very intimidating to a lot of our students. But we wanted them to be able to try it while they were still in high school, because that was really important. And so you can see kind of the result of that increased communication and that collaboration across our central office teams with school personnel giving feedback, and then with our partners at FCC.
That's a great partnership. I'm happy to hear that, because that is something I get a lot of feedback from parents that are, why does that the IEP and the 504, like, transfer, trying to understand how that process is going to be different once they enter college or they're looking for working college.
It is, and colleges fall under 504 law.
Yeah.
So all of the plans are officially under the 504. So it does look quite different, but we've been able to make it a little bit clearer for our
Communication.
families.
It's really opening those doors. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Did you have another question?
How are the credits evaluated for a transcript, as far as using our transcript and their grades from FCC to move on to college? I've heard conflicting things, that colleges judge AP classes better, whether or not they're even going to give you the AP credit, or whether or not the credit becomes a credit in your program. They judge the AP classes like, oh, you took an AP, like that was a higher level class. So how does that work? Is that true?
Yeah, and AP versus dual enrollment is our #1 question from students when they're making their final decision about which program to sign up for, and why we have so many. So I'm glad you asked that. So with colleges and universities, what we had was we had actually a team at Frederick High who was hearing this from a lot of students and families and concerns about it. So they called 120 colleges, admissions offices, and asked them what their official, like what do you value, AP, dual enrollment, higher, what does it do? And the answer from the vast majority of them was that they view DE and AP as pretty similar depending on the context of the school in which the student is coming from. And because we have large programs in both, they would judge us mostly as being very similar. We weight them the same in the high school transcript, and so that kind of gives the idea that these are both college programs. There were a handful of private universities that some said they preferred DE because it shows the kid can actually earn the college credit, and some said they preferred AP because of their investment in the AP program. But again, the vast majority of those colleges and universities viewed those both very positively, and the primary thing they would communicate to students is just have the most rigorous schedule possible that you can handle, and so they would consider these very rigorous. For the credit transfer piece, because you did ask about that, it's a little bit complicated for our kids because they have a high school transcript, and all of their DE classes will show in the high school transcript. They get to choose whether they get high school credit for it or not, but most students want the high school credit because it's a weighted credit and you're doing it anyway. And then what they have to do is not only send the high school transcript to enroll in the college, they would have to order their FCC transcript to get the transfer credit. And so we do have every summer we have a bunch of students and parents calling me like, oh my God, my credits didn't transfer, what do I do? Just go order your transcript from Parchment and you guys will be okay. So
That explains some of the emails.
The other,
Just way back in the olden days when I took AP, before we had all these options.
Dating yourself.
I know, it was a long time
I don't
ago.
remember there being AP.
Oh no, we had AP, and I took the test, and I got my credits, but I was like, oh, take this AP class and I won't have to take English 101. Oh, no. I got an English elective credit and I still had to take, you know what I mean? So it counted overall to my credits, but I did not get them in program. And I think that also happens in our DE program too.
Transfer is very complicated. We do have a couple of resources that we have for families where, like, probably the 8 most enrolled in colleges and universities by our FCPS students, we have exactly what all those high school-based courses transfer as in there, and I can, like, that resource is available.
When you're giving that information to students and families, are those 8 colleges and universities listed in there so they can see that, okay, so they should know?
Yeah, and it's mostly, we do the Maryland Public Schools. Of course, everyone wants to know about their unique, specific college.
Sure.
We always encourage them to call the admissions office and call the transfer office, and especially for our kids that participate in one of those AA programs or are earning a significant number of credits, it does influence which colleges and universities they end up considering. We had a student who just recently graduated from the early college who was admitted to the Mount and got admitted to Georgetown. And the Mount was going to take all of his credits, and Georgetown was going to take almost nothing. And he knew he wanted to go to graduate school because he's going to be a math professor, very smart child from Catoctin High. And so he decided that he was going to go to the Mount, save some money, and then grad school he can go anywhere he wants. So even when they get into a prestigious university with this, sometimes it changes that conversation. For the AP program, one of the things that College Board does is it does list what all of the tests transfer as for each university, so that we often refer students to that as well. But again, it won't have those nuances. University of Maryland in particular loves to do this, where they're like, 3 is an elective credit, but a 4 is what gets you the credit for the class. Of course. And a 5 is the only thing that'll get you credit for the class in the major. So it does get a little complicated. So we try and focus on educationally, what is the benefit? Stay aware of that transfer stuff. If it's really important to you to get an advanced pathway, then make sure that you're talking to your schools and following up on it.
Okay, thank
The
you.
other thing I did want to point out along those lines is just in recent years with the new parameters that we've put in place. Prior to that, as dual enrollment began and started to grow like 10 years ago, the context was what I call random acts of dual enrollment. I want to take this, I want to take that.
Trying things out.
Take this, I want to take that. And then they get to the back end and it doesn't transfer. Whereas now, some of the parameters that we put in place to register for a dual enrollment class, we're asking you, the student, to indicate a pathway. You're not choosing a major or anything like that, but you have to say arts and humanities or STEM, some direction of where you want this to take you. And then it's subject to some advising by us or the school counselor with some of the resources that Dr. Sung talked about, which then kind of put some guardrails around the transferability because we actually have a path towards something with someone advising the student. So I think that really has also evolved in recent years to address that very issue.
It's a very good point, because at times we talk a lot about wanting to provide so much choice and choice and choice, and the problem with so much choice is then how do you make good decisions? And this is a great time for students to actually be faced with, well, I can't do all of it. I really need to make some intentional choices and have to sit and think about what they see in the next, do that goal setting, that 5-year goal setting, and that 10-year, really think through those choices. So.
And we see ourselves as much as a parent education program as a student education program. So we definitely spend a lot of time helping families with this process.
Reminding them the transfer part's a gamble. A little bit of a gamble. Okay.
You can make some
predictions, but really the rigorousness of the program is what you tell you.
And it just, it does, like I said, it does end up influencing our students' decision-making, and I don't know that that's a bad thing.
Exactly.
It helps them understand higher ed in a different perspective.
Yeah.
Okay, so since you asked about AP versus dual enrollment, moving on to AP. So we've also had expanding access to the advanced placement program. We're giving more tests. A higher percentage of students who are now enrolled in an AP course are taking the test, which we love because, if you're in the course, we want you to give it a shot. We want you to try. And sometimes people really worry if we're expanding access and we're including more students and stuff, are our scores going down? And actually, the last few years, we've had pretty dramatic increases in percent of students students getting a 3 or higher, which is what entitles them to college credit in Maryland universities. And so again, how that plays out is a little bit. Yeah, but we do have a significant number of our students accessing these courses and earning a credit that would transfer. And also AP is interesting because unlike dual enrollment, it is a pathway that students can start to access in 9th and 10th grade. And so this does include all of our 9th through 12th graders that are taking these courses. And that's a pretty big leap for some of our younger high school students. We've also seen an increase. The AP Scholar Awards is a program that College Board has where if students are successful in 3 or more AP tests, and there's actually a couple different levels. There's one where AP with Scholar with distinction, where if you get 5 or more tests and you have a really high average. But we've seen an increase in the number of students who are completing their AP Scholar pathway, and it does align really nicely with what Blueprint wants for this CCR pathway. So it's great to see.
Yeah. It's great to see that kids are challenging themselves and we're challenging them as well. Right. And not just. So, good.
And so last, I just wanted to share like kind of a new area that we're exploring with our Frederick Community College partnership. So that third branch of CCR Pathways is the CTE programming. And something that people may not be aware of is FCC actually receives Perkins funding and has CTE programs and things like that. And they're part of our partnership with the CTE advisory and all of that. However, they run their programs, and historically, sometimes we haven't had students accessing those programs. And so we're trying to be a little bit more intentional with how can that meet some needs for our FCPS students through our partnership. And so FCC has some both credit and non-credit workforce programs, most of which, but not all of which, are housed in their Monroe Center, which is like their extension campus. It's over near the fairground. It also houses workforce services for Frederick County. So it's really nice that they kind of share a space. And so those programs that our students are taking, we call it career pathways, they're taking, there's automotive classes, there's a biotechnology piece, healthcare that includes dental assisting and the certified nursing assistant at GNA, which we have other opportunities for students, but it also includes some things that we don't offer in FCPS, like sterile processing, which is really exciting. FCC has an award-winning hospitality and culinary institute, and so we have a handful of students accessing those programs there. We have some trades. They have a really great shop that they do residential electrical, they do welding, and they do HVAC.
Yeah.
So, and those also are credit pathways, actually, that could lead to an associate degree if a student wanted to go beyond the certificate. And then they do have a user support specialist, which is that CompTIA, and so that's another one. And these are considered short-term pathways. They were primarily developed for adult learners. So in our community, the typical customer of Monroe Center at FCC is someone who's changing careers or an older person returning to get their education. But we found that a lot of our students also enjoy being able to work in these programs. And so we have a number of students who are enrolled in those this fall, and will be next year as well. The nice thing is that many of the programs also prepare students for those industry recognized credentials that we have in all of our CTE programs of study. And so this presents an alternate way for more students to be able to complete a program that allows them to get an industry recognized credential. We've also worked with, some of these programs are for credit, so they were already kind of part of our open campus, but we're trying to be more intentional with the pathway piece, and we want them to complete the certificate so that they can be hired. But some of them are what's called college non-credit, and so we didn't have like a clear way of doing high school credits for that, but we worked through that last school year. So now students participating in these programs are able to get high school credits along with their certifications that they're doing at FCC. We certainly see expanded desire in this area. We're not able to serve all the students who expressed an interest in, like there weren't enough seats.
By like double.
So we are still working with FCC on how can we expand. They are actually moving some of their healthcare programs from Monroe to a new building at the main campus in a few years. So hopefully that'll give more expanded access spaces and things like that.
That's a huge, that's a difficult thing. I mean, having gone through a nursing program, community colleges are great avenues for folks to get into the health field. And sometimes they get in as they want to go as a GNA and then they go and become a doctor, right? It can, it can create many different pathways for folks. And I did get a chance to see the dental program and the medical assistant program at CTC a couple of weeks ago. And it's great, and there's a wonderful group of students, but it's a small space, right? And you're trying to, and the lighting's not great, right? And I say that from a point of view of like when you have to go in and do skills, and you talk about sterile processing, or if you're talking about IV skills or dental, whatever it is, but these are great careers for students.
Yeah. I don't know if any of you have ever walked through the Monroe Center, the FCC campus at Monroe
Yeah.
Center, but the equipment and the facility is, much of it mirrors what we would have at the CTC. So when you as board members or we as a system hear about the space constraints at the CTC,
Yeah.
the Monroe Center and our partnership with FCC becomes part of our solutions.
That's what I was gonna ask, because I know we turn away kids from the CTC because we just don't have the space in the program. So is there a way to try to use some of these
That's
programs?
exactly what's happening here.
Okay.
This is starting a partnership with FCC, and I want to just publicly recognize them for welcoming us into that facility with our FCPS students. We've learned that some of those programs are not well populated by FCC students during the day. So for us to be able to take advantage during the day in some of these ways, this is kind of in its infancy for us as a district and with our partnership with FCC, but we see this growing in the coming years, and it's not going to solve all of our problems with CTE, but it does address some of the capacity concerns.
Right. So if we're going back to that budget and the cost thing that we were talking about earlier, so if they're on campus, there's that 43% or 40%, how does that work? And then I'm just wondering if we're going to ever foresee a time in the future, because right now we're filling a seat, right? So FCC budgets their classes and all of that, and they're going to look at price per seat, right, that they can put in that classroom. And we're helping them out with that. But do we ever foresee a time where perhaps they are starting to fill those classes during the day, and they may give us a little bit of pushback on how much, or no, as part of our agreement that we're a pretty solid, how many number of
You mean
seats?
taking them on campus?
Yeah, taking them on campus, and that's what, I mean, I'm just sort of thinking about the cost of things, and they're also having to run like a business, right? So I'm curious if we might foresee maybe 5 years, some pushback from FCC, and then still
About-
looking about being able to fill those seats, whether it's
High
a,
school based or
yeah,
about?
well, not the high school, I just was thinking about the high school base,
Okay.
made me think about this one. Does that make sense?
So like if we're filling up their
Yeah.
classes with
Exactly.
our FC
But at a lower
reduced
cost,
rate.
at a reduced rate, but they're seeing now a higher need to bring in adults who are willing to pay a full rate. See what I'm saying? Yeah.
I think there was some anxiety about that at FCC in the past, but I think current leadership has understood that this is part of their mission. And it's cost effective for them as well to a certain extent, because they know that these kids are going to be successful and that they have extra supports and navigation. And it ends up benefiting their institution as well, because they also get what's called conversions,
Okay.
where students are enrolled in one or more dual enrollment classes. They like what's happening. It's like free advertising for them.
Higher.
So then they're able to
Yeah.
have that student come enroll with them full time.
Percentage on that, so where you have a student that's attended some of these classes and they go on to enroll in additional classes with FCC, that, to be able to kind of know those percentages, do we have a percentage on that?
So I think that FCC is working right now to gather all of that data. So I would have to look at their most recent reports. I do know it was pretty close to 30% like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the kids who are taking the dual enrollment classes want to go straight to a four-year school. But I suspect that might be higher, especially given what's happening right now with the landscape of student aid.
Yeah,
When students are going to find that they want to stay more and finish out their program at FCC.
There's gonna be less student aid and
I will say that parking lot has never been
Yeah.
this year.
That's fantastic.
And that's traditional students as well as RDE students.
It's a great problem to have.
Yeah,
For them, it is. I hope they're doing some facilities planning.
I know, we're not trying. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, and without further ado, I will turn it over to my colleague.
All right.
Well, you were hearing all about the amazing opportunities at the high school level for our students. Dr. Sung did a great job summarizing those, but we know that the student opportunity along the learning journey begins earlier. Just full disclosure, you just heard from me in May. So a lot of this information is going to be very familiar to you. And so with that, working backward with the middle school program delivery, we have the Highly Able Learner, or HAL program. And that is offered to students who are advanced or gifted and talented. And so we have honors classes in English and math, as well as gifted and talented cluster groups. There's that accelerated math course pathway that allows students to have algebra and geometry by the end of grade 8. In science and social studies, we have HAL clusters for our advanced students, again, advanced and our gifted and talented students. And then there is an ongoing talent spotting process that is supported by our middle school advanced academics teacher specialist, and their goal is to really work shoulder to shoulder at the school level to not only support the students but to really support the teachers in delivering those scaffolds to bolster the students' educational experience in the classroom. And working backward to elementary, starting with the intermediate level, we formally identify for gifted and talented services at grade 3, so going into grade 3, and that's where we offer the gifted and talented cluster grouping during Tier 1 instruction for ELA and math, and that's again during the small group instruction. Our advanced academics teacher specialists are again at the elementary level going to provide the support to both the students, because sometimes our students are underachieving, so they're providing student support, but they're also providing that teacher support. The immersion in an advanced experience begins at pre-K. So all of our students pre-K to 2 are immersed in the GEARS program, which is that growing elementary advanced academics readiness in students, and that's called early talent development. But we know that during that time period, students bubble up, right? They're ready for challenge, and so through the fluid ability groups in reading and in math, we're able to provide them with access to advanced academics resources.
And you're having to really scaffold that as well with students who are multilingual learners and special education students, and so it definitely is, I would assume, a different delivery, sort of assessments, right?
Different, the assessments occur during that grade 2 level, and we pull in multiple assessments, including are we to access for our ELs assessment, yes. And so with the gifted and talented identification, which you're asking about, again, this is an ongoing process that begins with the universal screening, and that occurs in grades 2 and in 5. And from there, for the identification, we use multiple measures of ability, performance, and potential to identify students for services. And again, the opportunity to access advanced materials is not limited to identified GT students. All teachers have access to the advanced academics teacher resources. And so you asked about identification, and it really is a strategic collaboration with the ME office as well as the special education department. Last year we had almost 20% of our students identified as gifted and talented, and that was in grades 3 through 12. And again, we're constantly looking at all of the metrics that we have in the school system to provide opportunities for our students.
I appreciate that. That's I can imagine. So I had a labor and delivery. We always say, know your baseline, so that you know your talking about medical labs and such. So she said, you know your baseline, so you know your abnormals, right? But in this case, the baseline, most of the our general education teachers and so forth, no matter what the grade is, they have what they're used to seeing in terms of how kids are reacting to subject matter or into the classroom environment. And especially with the youngest learners, I think too, it might be harder to identify somebody only because, who's advocating for the kid, able to say, hey, we really need to do a different kind of assessment, or we really need to see, because I think maybe we're just missing something, right? And it could be because there's a language barrier, it could just be that there's an IEP that hasn't been identified yet, that sort of thing. So in terms of professional development for our teachers too, to help, or even what questions would be good for parents to be asking that they might not think to ask.
And so that it is an ongoing process that is supported by the advanced academics teacher specialists, working again in tandem with our ME program teachers, as well as our special education staff. They're working with the teachers. They're regularly making classroom visits to Talent Spot. And so it truly is a whole school partnership to really.
How many schools do they have generally? The specialists that are helping out the different schools, is it in each school, or they have many schools?
So they have multiple schools.
Right, that's what I thought.
Yes.
Okay. So what does that day look like? How many schools are they going to?
So 4 to 5, depending, and we're talking about the intermediate level. And I have a couple who have 6, but that includes the primary.
Sure, okay.
And then at the middle school level, they have 1 or 2 classes, but it really depends on the caseload.
Okay.
The number of students identified as gifted and talented. So we really evaluate that from year to year, so that we are providing that lift that our schools need in order to support the students fully.
I'm thinking to just, because you're going to have shifts in that a little bit, I would imagine, so, yeah. Questions?
What happens when we have a student who we have not identified, but their parents come and say, like, look, they need something way more challenging? Is there a way for us to then test them? Is there actual specific parameters, like, for skills, or, like, what objective measurements can a parent use to say, like, look, my kid really does need this other level of work? Or
Well, we have what we call a longitudinal database that follows a student all the way back to their earliest years. And we're able to provide data-based decisions to our parents whenever they're asking and they want to know, well, why my student wasn't identified, why is that? And we really we go school by school and we're looking at student groups, and our guidelines are we're looking for outliers. And so we don't want parents to ever think that our decision making is arbitrary. It is rooted in the data, and we can always provide a comprehensive data picture to the students. But again, we are listening to our parents, and so if we feel that there's a need to talent spot and give that child access to an advanced level task and see how well they do, well then that's what we're going to do, because that's just where we stand philosophically. Every child, every day, it means we're constantly watching and keeping our finger on the pulse of not only what maybe our families are telling us, but what our classroom teachers may be seeing.
I was going to say, is there an educational version of white coat syndrome?
Oh. Yeah, I think so.
about.
Yeah, I absolutely do
Okay.
think so, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and we know, honestly, we can't just use one measure.
Exactly.
Because we call it a tummy ache day. On the student, during the screening process, if a student has a bad assessment experience because maybe they were tired or something else was going on, that's again why we need to use those multiple
Yeah, no, makes
measures.
sense, yeah, when they're in different environments and they're able to express some of those things.
Indeed.
Yeah, makes sense, all right.
To your question, Ms. Brennan, there is a regulation that governs some of this. When a parent, sometimes there's an outlier student who may want to skip a grade level, or skip a math course and go to something higher level. There's a lot of data that helps the principal or us make some informed decisions, but the regulation also outlines a process that the principal has to go through. There's some forms to fill out, there's some data, as Dr. Reinhardt mentioned, so those situations do arise, but there is a regulation that helps us out with that.
Okay, because we have heard from some parents who feel that their kids haven't been advanced maybe as quickly as they think. It almost means like, oh, we'll put you in this next level, and then it's like, but we're already, like, that was also too low. It's like, oh, we gotta have you in the level for a little while, and it seems like they feel like they should be, but, you know, I am also a parent, so everybody thinks their kid is a service kid. I know that we're not,
Is the struggle.
and we're not always the most unbiased arbiters of our kids' skills and intelligence. So trying to find that balance, like as far as like making sure we are really challenging those kids. And I'm just wondering how much of a challenge that some of these kids can get, even though we identify highly abled learners and we're providing them with opportunities younger. And I understand the balance. You don't want a third grader with sixth graders. Emotionally, social, like, I mean, that's in two different worlds. But like, if you have a third grader who's really doing fifth or sixth grade level work, how much, even with trying to give them more things in their classroom, are they really getting like that kind of like, all right, how old are we? All right, like the Doogie Howser kind of, you know, I'm thinking like that. Oh, wait, who's gonna get that reference? Okay, like, all right, well, let's
I
do
remember
that.
the show.
Like, what are we doing for like those kids? You know what I mean? Like, how do we make
Yes.
sure that we're getting those? You know, because I feel like a Doogie Howser third grade he's already 8th grade. He's already 9th grade. Now, mentally, emotionally, probably not. But like, what are we doing? You know?
We're reviewing the data after every single major data administration, and we're watching for those extreme outliers. And so when those students come to our attention, we usually see it first because we have the whole profile in front of us. Then we might pursue, and it would be considered a tier 3. It's a full grade acceleration, but it is not, again, just looking at those data. It's a whole child process. And so we really do follow, it's called the Iowa Scales for Acceleration, which is a gold standard process out of the Beeline Blank Center. And it, again, is the whole child approach, and we work with that parent, but it does involve full grade acceleration involves multiple indicators of data as well as off-level testing to determine the best placement for that child. And it's not just my office. I work in collaboration with my other colleagues here at, in DCI to make those decisions.
And this is where it's just almost as much about parental education.
Absolutely, it
Right.
is. It
Because
is.
it does get, we're talking about, elementary, middle school and identifying those, but by the time they're getting into 8th grade, they're talking about pathways that they're going to start taking in high school, right? So they're already beginning those conversations. And so these kids that maybe didn't have the best fit into one of the other earlier programs may find the better fit when they get a little bit older and into a high school, different choices.
That's why the screening happens at multiple
Yeah.
grade levels and the data analysis is ongoing.
And having that conversation with parents can be like, the ambiguity of it all. You all want answers right now. It can be hard. Okay, I don't envy that. I know some other teachers who've had to have those conversations with parents.
There are partners.
They are partners, yeah. So, but that education, that's why the education communication piece is so important. Right? Yeah, so they can understand the process. Did you have another question? I feel like I
Yeah,
sent
I do.
one on the
Or do we
shoulders.
have
There we go.
I don't have the agenda in front of me. Is this
The only
This is the
presentation.
only
Yeah.
presentation.
That's what I thought. I just didn't want to be like.
Yeah. No.
So with the kind of moving back to like dual enrollment and stuff, what are our options for, or I guess maybe kind of, one of the things that I found hard as a parent who recently navigated this was the idea, now I knew about it because actually you had been coming to Frederick Classical many, many times. Like, so since 6th grade, I was preparing my son, like, you will go to the early college program. You will go to the early college program. Like, we had been like mapping things out like that. And then in 9th grade, he decided he really liked the CTC and the HVAC program. And so turned my whole little
World upside
plan around. But that's my type A personality. And so I was like obsessed with making sure he'd have everything ready to go to be in early college. But are there some ways that we could get that information? And I know we had the nights, and I went to all the nights, but I would even talk to other parents, and I'd be like, oh yeah, we're looking, I want to make sure Declan's ready for the early college program. And my friends would be like, what is that? And I know, and I'm not, I know we, put a ton of info out. I know we're doing these nights. I'm not,
It's hard, yeah.
but like, is there a way we could kind of like package some of these options up? Like, hey, have you thought about this career? If you want to do this career, like these are the 10 classes you should look to try to do.
Kind of like
To
the women in the
maybe,
college handbook sort of thing. for
I don't
me,
know, I'm just
yeah.
like thinking about, because I did find it hard to kind of navigate some of that, and I even had it hard, like, Declan got a class the FCC was registered for, and it got dropped. And,
Well, now that's something, yeah.
well, I know,
that's
but
the FCC
he's
thing, yeah, that's hard,
typical,
yeah.
typical boy. And it was like, you know, a week before the
Yeah.
semester starts,
Yeah.
and I'm like, all right, are you in Blackboard now? Because it's all FCC, and I can't do it. So like, let's get into Blackboard. Like, where's your, you know, where's all your courses? And then it's like, all right, well, wait a minute, you have one course you're registered for. Where's your second course? And then lo and behold, they told him 2 months before. You know what I mean? Like, they were timely. And we were scrambling around to find a class to fit, you know what I mean? And so I just kind of feel like, which is not, I mean, that could happen anytime. But it just made me think about like laying them out as far as like, not, well, will this class work? But like, these are the classes you should do for this pathway. Or
Yeah,
if
a
you're
little
looking
bit of
for
like a
this,
deadline
these are the ones you should do.
Have some newer supports in place through our career coaches.
Okay.
That are in the high schools and in the middle schools. They're collaborating and working with our guidance counselors. And so they do that type of thing. You're interested in it, they help students figure out the career that they're interested in or a pathway that they're interested in. And then what are the really kind of next steps that you need to take to get there? And so that's actually their work too, which they
Okay.
do in collaboration with guidance counselors.
At times, a lot of these conversations will happen around all kinds of different aspects, whether it's testing or whatever. And I know we can subscribe to the calendar on FCPS. That calendar is about early dismissal and the days that we have off. And has anybody ever thought to put a calendar together? Let's say it would include the high school calendar. You know, these are the dates that you have to be aware of for testing or for the deadlines that we need to have. I mean, it's just a thought. Folks could
We
subscribe
have
to
some
it.
of that in our planning guide.
Okay.
With our course guides, there's that supplemental planning guide. But that's all conversation that we're having now too about updating some of that in that planning guide, because that's a document that goes out every year to families. So that would be a good recommendation.
I think it would just be good too to try to make people think, I mean, like, if I had to do, I was really glad it worked out the way it did because we did get all of our languages done before 8th grade and we did get a math done before 8th grade. And so we came into high school not stressed about
Kind of prepared for
credits. And I kind of wonder like what, to
Middle
try
school's
to
hard, yeah.
bring that up a little earlier so parents can maybe, who didn't experience that themselves, so that they know that that option's there. Like, what does my kid have to do to be able to take geometry by the 8th grade? So that we get these two math, you know what I mean? I'm just thinking, like, some of that stuff kind of comes up. It's like, oh, we could have taken geometry last year? Well, that was last year. And I'm not saying we should do anything. I'm just kind of thinking as a parent, because sometimes we do things as the way we do things, but then seeing it as a parent very recently, kind of like,
I think this goes
what
back to
did we feel like we were
yeah.
missing? You know what I mean?
We've identified a major issue that
Yeah.
not only us as a public school system, but across the country. What I said earlier about random acts of dual enrollment, that, or whether it's the math pathway that you're on, or whether it's what career you're interested in, what we know is that our school counselors don't always have the time in their day for advising.
Yes.
Long-term career college advising, what they would want to be doing, but they're also doing other things.
Sure.
Which is why the Career Coach Initiative was born, one of them, because we know that that advising of kids of the long-term path, starting young, is so critical. So yes,
All of the things, I mean, people get their information 1,000 million different ways, and that's part of the problem. And anytime we have any kind of communication, if we're lucky to retain 20% of it, you know, whether it's a meeting at a school to tell parents about all the options they may have, we're lucky anybody to walk out of that remembering more than 20%. So it's difficult. I don't envy that. And it's a lot of little moving pieces and options for kids. And we want them
There's
all.
always ways to be better.
Yeah. Well, and you know, as soon as we get it right for maybe a year, something will change. And then, so I look at it as like there's a constant, like, what are ways we could keep assessing? What are those assessment tools, survey tools? And I like, when I was asking about what questions can parents be asking, and I say that too just as, oftentimes as a nurse. So one of the things about nursing that makes this different than being a physician is in nursing we don't diagnose, right? Yet you want to advocate for your patient. Doctors also have fragile egos an awful lot of times. So one of the ways I personally identified, and lots of nurses do this, but it's about helping the patient figure out what the questions to ask are, right? Because they don't know. There's so many different ways to ask. And what are questions that parents could be asking that you wish parents had asked a teacher or somebody earlier that we could put into that handbook that says, hey, you have an elementary school kid, here's some questions you might want to think about. These are things that you might be experiencing at home. Here's a list of 3 to 5 bullet point questions. You think your kid might need more challenge. Here's what you need to ask your teacher or I don't know, it's a thought. I think perhaps giving the parents, instead of, it's not just here's information and it's static and there's a period on it. Here's a question you can then take back, because we also need that information from parents, right? Yeah.
I think our dual enrollment program is just fantastic.
Yeah.
And I was so jealous because I wish that my options had been that many.
Right.
And I do think that the one thing that I really liked about it is that we can have kids who kind of feel like they're done, be done. You know, like, and they can go to school, they're still doing school, but they're kind of like, I'm over to high school, I don't care about prom, I'm over home, like, I want to move on with my life. Like, maybe they've been out in the workforce for a while, and it gives them that opportunity to kind of still be,
With their friends, but not.
you know, heavy guidance, but also kind of feel like, yeah, I just want to move on, and I just really think that's a good option. What is the option, though? So we pay for 4, I get that. Is there a way that our kids could take, you know, a 3rd class, but pay for it? And how does the registration work with that?
Great question. It's extremely manual right now.
Okay.
But we are, because we're early in the process. But yes, students are able, if they want to take courses beyond what we will cover, but it's educationally appropriate for them to be able to access that course, there's a process where they can pay the discounted tuition directly to FCC. And FCC is a great partner. That's one of the reasons dual enrollment works so well. They're a great partner with every stage of this program, but including billing. Like, they work directly with our students and families, set them up with payment plans for kids who are taking significantly more classes than that. And that was all in place actually before we started covering all of DE, so we just kind of like revived all the.
Yeah, we don't want that to be a secret.
That's kind of interesting, right?
We don't want that to be a secret, because there are times where kids want to go beyond that, and there's certainly an avenue to do that. It's a lot of work for us.
Yeah.
So the students are getting the discounted rate, if they're doing like the associate's program, they're gonna go ahead and they're getting that discounted rate for all those courses.
Yeah.
All the additional.
That's great, and I think that that's something, of all this information, because parents don't read half of what we say.
No, they do not.
Let's just be honest. I don't,
It's
as a
overwhelming.
parent. No, I don't, no, and nobody does. We shouldn't expect them, but when it comes to dollars and cents, I think that right there is probably one of the biggest messages that we need to send home to our families and our students, because of the opportunity for that discounted rate. If you're trying to expand these programs and grow the base, that's the way to do it, because dollars and cents speaks to students and it speaks to parents. And I think that that's where you drive it home. And then you advertise that, parents are going to be sending in questions and speaking with the right people here at FCPS.
Well, and that's why it's one of the #1 reasons that they take the courses.
Well, I was asking about that just from the perspective that it would not allow us to just register online in excess
there is
of the
a process,
4.
right,
Yes.
to make sure that the
Well, right,
courses
but
are
I mean, I'm just bringing it up because it
Yeah.
would be nice if it would be
Yes.
like, hey, this is 1 over, you know what I mean, and you got to pay for that, as opposed to like we couldn't register, which I relented and did not force the 3rd class because we had sufficient. I like to keep my kids busy. All right, we got a lot going on. So I did give up on that and I let it go. But I was curious, like, what the next step would be to try to get that to happen.
And this was our first year, I think, Scott, you mentioned that. This was the first year, really, the last year with the rules in place. And so our school counselors have gotten better at communicating early with families. Our FCC advisors who work directly with our DE students are better at communicating this information with families. So it's definitely gotten better this year. I think we have, oh God, at my last estimate, we had probably about $100,000 worth of tuition that families are covering for this fall.
Okay, good.
Maybe a little more.
Wow.
So.
And as far as the classes in the schools, do we have a broad range of, like, all of our high schools have some school-based options and things like that?
They all do.
Okay.
We certainly are almost to a point, want to be at a point where certain the base offerings, like the English 101, the math courses they typically take, that's all of our schools have them. And then there's often some others, more elective options and stuff that are really driven by student interest and become sort of implanted in a school community. So we are at a point, absolutely, where all of our high schools offer high school-based. Many of the core courses are consistent across all, but particularly in some of the elective areas, that would be more of just sort of school-based interest that's popping up.
Okay.
And we are at 11:06.
Okay.
Any other final questions or anything before we wrap it up?
Well, we're going to go ahead and just talk about what's coming up.
Okay, perfect.
All right, so October 8th is our next CNI committee meeting, and actually, we'll be hearing from our CTE team. So you'll be hearing from the Career and Technical Education team. They do have some information there about career coaches, so you'll be learning more about that. And then we will be hearing from our Visual and Performing Arts team as well.
That's right, and they're going to cover anything, and they're still working on the, that collaboration between the arts program and CTE.
You
and
will hear all about that.
Right,
on
I'll have to
October 8th.
hear about that.
Together,
Yeah.
and so if Dr. Hirschman or Mr. Kurtz are listening, Visual and Performing Arts are college and career pathways.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Everything is interdisciplinary.
Motion for adjournment.
There are DE and AP options in.
There you go. Exactly. Exactly. And we have the Academy of Fine Arts. Okay. Well, thank you so much for everybody for all of the wonderful information and for being here. We are now adjourned.
Thank you.
Yeah.